Hello there everybody, you're the audience, my name is Supersonic Blur, and welcome to some more patch notes. This time, instead of going over Hand of the Gods, today we are going to be going over the Smite 4.13 patch notes, Rally to Rome. This is, again, another smallish patch in terms of tweaks and tinkerings with items, and more just a case of content stuff, which is not always the bad thing, considering as well with Hydras World Championships coming up and HRX, they don't want to push too many big meta changes or balance changes. They're going to be saved mostly for Season 5, so right now it's mostly just stuff that absolutely needs to be touched. But before we get onto that, we do have that new content coming in, so we'll start off with the skins. First new skin that we have is the Defiant Bellona. It's a pretty nice looking card. I like it personally. As a person who likes running the solo lane, I may go back and play Bellona just because of the skin. I like it. It's got some nice new effects, a new voice pack. This is part of the Odyssey, which you can pick up, as is the next skin, the Badlands Vulcan skin, which is quite an interesting skin. It's sort of like almost like a, I don't want to say like Mad Maxy, but it's this very sort of like metal-y sort of thing, similar to how they have like the Thor medal, but just slightly more engineering based and mechanical, which kind of goes with being Vulcan, because, you know, Vulcan is technically the smith of the gods, so he may as well be an engineer as well. Next up, we have my favorite skin. I'm just going to straight up say it now. This is my favorite skin from this patch. This is the Order and Chaos Hell. This idea has been floating around since forever, since like Hell was a thing. People were like, yo, let's make Order and Chaos. So this is a pretty neat looking skin. I like how it looks. I like everything about it. I just like Hell a lot. It's just, you know, it's a cool skin. I like it, so I'm gonna get it. This one, again, these three, I believe, are in the Odyssey. Yes, they all are. And the last one, which is coming in, is another exclusive. This is going to be the Abyssal Knight Ares. If you enjoy tentacling people as much as I do, then you will like this skin, because you don't chain people, you tentacle them. So you can now call them a sucker for getting stuck by it. As well, for the Odyssey, we do also have the Salty Global Emote. I know that Duke Sloth has basically been living with this for forever, so that's going to be pretty fun. Expect to see a lot of that going around. The Salty Global Emote is quite nice, so there's 4 more things going for the Odyssey. We did also as well see the like sort of skin teasery trailer thing for the Ul skin. It seems to be pretty awesome. Seems to be voiced by the same guy who did the new Thief Loki skin, so fair enough then, that's a thing. Again, haven't seen too much of it, so we'll have to wait a little bit further to see how it comes out. Fixes-wise, Vulcan is getting a change to his Earthshaker. They've updated the sound effect so it is less scary for allies of Vulcan, in so much that you don't think, hang on a sec, there's a Vulcan on both sides. I've heard a Vulcan ult, but I don't know which one it is until I see the targeter. At that point, you know it's an ally or an enemy one. But, you know, it helps this sort of situation of less confusion, which is beneficial at all levels of play. It just makes things a little better. So I like that change, and I totally get the idea behind it. Items and balances. As we continue towards the path of the Smite World Championships, we're focusing on small adjustments as to bring as many possible strategies, items, and gods into the forefront without disrupting metas as a whole situation that are currently employed. Kind of sucks that they don't want to deal with the tank meta, but this time they kind of do. At this time of the year, we're also looking towards gods that have been on a downward decline in the last half of the year that could be buffed in a safe way for all players without disrupting the absolute top end of play. Basically, they don't want to ruin things for Worlds, as Worlds is basically under a month away. Well, it's just over a month away, so from that regard, they don't want to just suddenly push a huge meta shift that basically turns around from, hey, how good are you at the game, to, hey, how quickly can you build and learn a new meta? Can you do it in a month? Great, you'll win Worlds. So they're kind of saying, all right, this is the meta we're sticking with for now. How can we address this in the future? And how can we tweak it just now so that there's more variety to it? And that's one of the big things they're looking to do here. It's not destroy the meta, it's add options to it. And I think they've kind of done it okay with some of these things. And some of these things include things like Jade Emperor's Crown. Jade Emperor's Crown provides a huge spike in defense from physical damage dealers early, especially those that rely on scaling values, but it just genuinely does everything pretty good. It works with hunters, works with everything. You get into the middle of a situation and boom, Jade Emperor's Crown is pretty good. You can pick up 2 of those in a triple tank meta and there's nothing that your opponents can really do about it. If they dive your back line to get away from it, they're still getting hit by it. And it has 60 physical protections on it as well, so that kind of sucked. As a result, now, they want to better define this item's purpose and are reducing the physical protection on it from 60 to 50. You still get that 30 reduction of physical power, so it's still kind of fairly useful, but you're being slightly less tanky, because right now it was doing both ends of it. It was making you really tanky and making it so your enemies did less damage to you, and because you're already tanky, they did less damage to you, so it doubled up on that effect, and they didn't quite want to end up in that situation. Speaking of doubling up on effects, Gladiators Shield. This has been a staple for warriors and assassins and anyone who can do with the sustain for multiple situations. After multiple balance adjustments, it has been made much closer to its point in power levels with the cost of it in terms of other items. In this patch, they want to bring down the physical protections on this item so that it helps diversify these warrior builds a little bit more, or these assassin builds if they're going to run it into the jungle in the tankier option. So they're reducing the physical protections on it from 35 to 30. This as well helps with the tank meta a little bit more. Assassins, if they're going to build this kind of an item, aren't going to be as tanky for it. Most of the time we see them build the Ancile first, more so than anything else, but if they do then want to run into the Gladiator Shield as well, you are sacrificing a little bit of protection for it. But then again, you are also buying it for 1700 gold. So from that regard, it's supposed to be where it is. It's, again, bringing these items in line with where they're supposed to be. Talking about that kind of things, the Executioner. Similar to Gladiator Shield for warriors, the Executioner has been a core item in most hunter builds since the item was existing. So, yeah. And it's been through multiple changes, buffs and nerfs and retreads and reboots and whatever. However, whether they were building towards power, critical strikes, on-hit effects, it doesn't matter. The Executioner was always viable because it gives you a good attack speed, gives you penetration reduction so it can help anyone else who's physical deal damage, and genuinely just does good things. However, the power on it was a bit of a kicker, so they're reducing that power a little bit more. How much by 5? You know, you were so close to almost tweaking it, and then you didn't. You didn't. Look at Kin Size. Kin Size has a lot of power and a little bit of attack speed on it. Make the Executioner the opposite of that. A little bit of power with a lot of attack speed, which is kind of, you know, if it had got 20 physical power, then it could be seen in that situation. What it also does is it means that Titan's Bane has something over Executioner. Right now, it still kind of doesn't. It's 50 gold more for... the difference now is just in the penetration and attack speed, which is still better for the Executioner. If I spend 50 gold and get the attack speed and more penetration and its penetration reduction as well, fine. Absolutely happy with it. Executioner is still an item which is going to be bought. It's still a hunter item. In the same vein, Devourer's Gauntlets is a powerful item that provides some of the highest cost to stat ratios that there are once they are fully stacked. Historically, this item has been on a razor's edge for balance, with tweaks quickly pushing it in and out of the core build for hunters. Rather than adjust multiple aspects of this item, we are just increasing the cost slightly and pushing back how quickly hunters will be able to begin building up the power on this item. They're going to increase it by 100 gold from 2,000 to 2,100. Sad times for all you siege mains who now cannot build Devourer's Gauntlets straight out of base. Instead, you have to pick Jingwei. Then what you do is you go tier 2 devos, you clear a camp, you back, then bust out and try and do it that way. Or you clear 2 camps, then return to base, get Devourers, and fly out back to lane. Maybe get a couple potions as well. That's my secret strat for that kind of things. But basically, they want to push Devourer's Gauntlets back a little bit. Hunters already get a load of solo farm, like just for free, because they're the guys who don't really do anything. They just kind of sit there and go, all right, we're going to trade. We're not really going to fight each other. If we fight each other, then we just sort of back up. But Devourer's Gauntlets lets you turn around and say, pushing that back just puts them in a little bit more precarious a situation. You can now gank them a little bit easier. They're not going to be as impactful on their own. They're not going to be able to necessarily rotate around as much. If they still get a lead and they get the Devourer's Gauntlets ahead of time, then they're still good, but it's just that timing they want to change a little bit. And now that we've seen the nerfs to the defensive items and a little bit of a nerf towards the hunter side of things, it's time to show a little bit of love to the assassins. We had some love for the mages in so much as they nerfed the magical defensive items. Now we're looking at a little bit of more of the core items, which is usually built onto an assassin, or an assassin, I should say. Hydras Lament. Assassins are more damage orientated, but have been pushed out in favor of tankier options because tankier options are just easier for them. If they don't die and can rely on their hunters to do damage, they don't have to do that. They just don't. If they just live and set up and use their base damage numbers, they were fine. Also, if they had Protection Shred, they were fine. See Nemesis, see Ratatoska, see Artio, see, well, she's not really a assassin, but see Nemesis, Ratatoska, and Sir Ket for options for that side of things. However, because they also wanted to nerf Titan's Bane last patch to deal with any warriors that just went in and decided, hey, we're just going to build full defense and then Titan's Bane, we're going to nerf that. That kind of meant that it pushed the assassins out further because it's like, well, you just got rid of some of their pen to try and deal with the tanky side of things. However, they're now changing Hydras Lament to be more beneficial for that, to be able to help with it. So it's going to see an increase in the damage to basic attacks that are dealt once you use an ability from 30% to 40%. This actually kind of can do a lot for a lot of different gods, and not just the ones that you necessarily think of straight away. There's always going to be things like Thor, Hornbats, who want to try and weave in those basic attacks between their abilities anyway. But also as well, you can, I was talking with a guy called Shadow of Olympus, we sort of discussed maybe the idea of even running this on like a Kali. Like you run Bluestone Pendant, you run Heartseekers, and you run Hydra's Lament. What you're doing in this situation is you go 1 basic, 3 basic, 2 basic, or blink 3 basic, 2 basic. And what you can get off in that situation is you're getting 80% bonus damage. That is almost the equivalent of getting another basic attack in 2. So you're doing almost 3 basic attacks rather than 2 in that situation, which is absolutely insane from those kind of situations. As well, not only that, you can even look towards things like Nemesis can build up a Hydra's Lament. She has an auto attack cancel with her 3. Why not just make it really strong? We've seen people build crit in the past for that cheeky crit chance on it as well, with things like a Wind Demon. You look at Adapting, who's done it. But now you could even do it there with Hydra's Lament for a more confirmable increase in damage. Not to mention as well, it gives you a little bit of sustain in terms of mana, and as well also gives you cooldown, which is pretty useful. You could actually look at this as a slightly more damage variation on something like a Gladiators Shield, but the sustain aspect of Gladiators still makes it fairly more viable, in my honest opinion. But it's a nice idea to see some of these changes come through. Jotun's Wrath is also seeing a change. Jotun's Wrath is getting a cost reduction which will help ability-based assassins be more threatening quicker. While warriors can make use of this level of cooldown reduction, they need to sacrifice a tankier item to fit this in, will push them into a more offensive or defensive choice. This is a serious trade-off and creates healthy choices for the class. They're going to shave off 100 gold for it. I still personally do not think that Jotun's Wrath will be picked up. Yes, the cooldown of 20% is really nice, and that is a big boon to this item, but that is pretty much all you're buying it for. And if you're buying that, why would you not buy, say, an Ancile, which gives you defense and power and slightly more utility? Yes, you drop a little bit of CDR, but you don't care because you get more utility off of the 30-second 1 second silence, rather than just your own abilities, which you don't get any sustain for, I will point out, because Jotun's Wrath just gives you flat mana. Also as well, why would I look to Jotun's Wrath when I could look to a Gladiators Shield, which would give me more sustain and a little bit of cooldown? It's not as much, but that's the trade-off you're going for. I just think that Jotun's is in a slightly awkward spot, especially if you were looking at this and turning around and say, oh, well, it's got pen on it. Yeah, it's got 10 pen on it. It's not that's super beneficial for it. So all in all, I think some tinkering will be done with the item. I reckon that we could see this come in, but the problem is that a lot of defensive items like that are most commonly picked up are things like Spirit's Robe and Mantle of Discord, because they are both very useful passives, and they both come with cooldown reduction, and you don't want to overcap cooldown reduction. Yes, you're only capping a little bit, but why would I burn a Jotun's Wrath and then have to try and worry about the CDR side of things when I could just say, well, I'll build like an Unseele and then Mystical Mail and Spirit's Robe and Mantle of Discord. It still doesn't quite fit in that situation. So, still a bit iffy on Jotuns. Again, tinkering around may be what's required. And now that we've gone over the item buffs, it's time to go over some of these god balances. First up on the list is A, and that is Awilish. Awilish is receiving a slight tweak, in so much that one of her abilities was actually bugged, and then Hi-Rez went, "It's not a bug, it's a feature, shut up. We totally intended for that to be a thing." Moonlight Charge originally had an issue where its range would actually be 73 units, and the targeter said that it was 65. Now they're going to up that to 70 units, so a buff for Moonlight Charge means that you can knock up from slightly further away, put a little bit more poke out from further away. Also as well, to complement with this situation, Gravity Surge is seeing a range increase as well to 75, so that if you hit someone with Moonlight Charge, you will almost always be able to hit Gravity Surge, because of the fact that there's not that you have to be in the same range with Moonlight Charge, so it helps Awilish from that regard. Still not necessarily seeing too much of her going to be played around. Again, I haven't really looked at too much of the numbers with her. If you want someone who knows the numbers, again, see Duke Sloth, who doesn't think she's going to be a big thing. She wasn't. I don't know what his viewpoint is regards to this patch, so don't quote me on that, but I would imagine that he's more going to be, if I had to guess, it would be it's nice, still don't think she's necessarily going to see play, but she might, but honestly, I still don't think you would pick her up. That's my Duke Sloth deduction for what he's going to say with that. Camazotz. Camazotz has been struggling since we adjusted to the damage to vampire bats and the bonus power from Screech. At the time, his dominance warranted these nerfs, but through the recent patches, it seemed that they're a bit too potent, also as well a shift away from what he does. We are reverting the changes made to Screech, allowing Camazotz players to benefit from a more powerful echo buff on his abilities. So instead of going from 10 to 30, it's now 20 to 40. Not 100% whether or not they could have potentially looked at it and gone 10 to 40. That's a slightly awkward number scaling, and then you get weird numbers, but whatever. They're just reverting it back and saying, alright, we done goofed, fair enough, we're just going to push it back to where it was. This may help him see some more play, but honestly, I don't see it, just because high tanky comps, yes, he can dive the backline, but that's about it. He dives the backline very well and he sustains very well, so if you do build him tanky, he can get a lot of regeneration and sustain off, and his health is very effective because of how many protections he has. But other than that, not 100% on it. That's just me. Discordia is going to see a little bit of a nerf. She's been causing a lot of chaos and strife on the battleground since she was entered, which is much to the distaste of the other gods. After watching her initial release, her overall damage and performance is slightly above what they would have expected for a character like Discordia. As a result, she is seeing a nerf on her scaling of strife, and I'm going to be real with you here. Strife is actually the ability which does everything. It's a root. Like, ignore the, oh, I pulled 2 enemies. Hit 1 enemy with this, and you hit your 1. That is it. That is what you can do. That is all you have to do, because it's insane. Also, as well, the amount of burst damage that this actually comes out with is pretty damn impressive. So, they want to tone that back and be more about, you know, use this ability to set up the madness, not just use this ability to blow someone up. You can still blow someone up if you hit Strife, don't get me wrong, because you'll have your 1, you should have your 1, you have the option for your ult, and it's designed to be a little bit more utility rather than burst, so that is what it is going to be. Fafnir is seeing a change. Fafnir has had a large impact at the highest level of play, but often struggles to make an impact at other levels of play. High-level players are able to abuse, and I will say abuse, Coerce for game-changing plays. Buffing the correct targets at the correct times enables teams to push down objectives at a very quick rate.
You see, what you do is you buff the hunter, you put the hunter, and you hit Coerce, and they blow up the tower, and that's how that works. If you haven't got that, I don't understand what you're doing!
Sorry, either way with that, Coerce is a very powerful ability at higher levels. However, the problem with it is that you can't really buff that too much without trying to tweak it and make it OP. So what they're doing is they're increasing its cooldown from 15 to 16 seconds. However, they are changing the attack speed buff as well. Wait, hang on. This is just a nerf. Actually, that's not too bad, because if you're going to build more, you don't overcap on the attack speed. So, the nerf the cooldown, they've increased it by a second, and the attack speed change is going from 10 to 50% to 15 to 35%. So it's a big change, don't get me wrong, this is a very big change. It's up in the early stages, and its level 2 is the same, but anything after that is lower. This is definitely going to help a lot of these double ADC comps. In nerfing the Fafnir means that you don't always get this super high objective pressure. You still get it, don't get me wrong. If you have things like a Hachiman and a Fafnir, you are going to lose a tower. You just can't stop that. That's a 65, like a, what? That'd be a 60% increase, I think, because it's like, no, 50, it would be 15%. It'd be back up to the 50, and Hachiman would get like a 60% increase, so it's nuts. But I do feel like this is a slightly beneficial. And I'm going to say that in a weird way. It's slightly beneficial because where you're building like Executioner and Kins and maybe even Odysseus' bow, you can end up overcapping on the CDR fairly easily, so the Fafnir doesn't get as impactful. So it's not necessarily super impactful for the hunters in the later game, but it does still help when sieging towers, make it feel a little bit easier, I will say. Kukulkan is getting a change. Everyone's favourite little noodle is in a pretty rough spot statistically. His ability is of great potential for him to be able to farm and for damage output, and he is always useful in a team fight with his objective secure. So they looked at giving him a minor buff that is more directed around the feel of Kukulkan. Kukulkan's size and flying speed, or walking, makes him feel like he is more moving painfully slow. So they're giving him a little bump up in the base movement speed to help him rotate through the conquest map and make him all round feel a bit better to play. He's increasing his base movement speed from 350 to 355. This will indirectly affect how much movement speed he gets off of his jet stream, I believe it is, the 2, which makes you go as a fast little noodle, but this is just nice. Kukulkan is a lot of these sort of mid-rangey kind of gods are very positional kind of gods, and it's not someone like a Thoth who can just be like, I'm just gonna sit behind a wall and do all my stuff. He kind of has to be around somewhere where you can see him, so it makes a little bit more usefulness. It means also as well that his farming potential becomes a lot stronger, because let's be honest here, you drop the 3 on a wave and then the wave is gone. You don't have to be there, it's just going to be gone, so you can now just leave and you can make those rotations a little bit faster, which is nice. Medusa has been on the lower end of the hunters. Even when you have this double hunter comp and you're like, who could we run in mid? People are not picking Medusa, which is always strange to me, because Medusa's like, oh, she can do the ability, she's got a good team fight and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, why would you not pick her? So from that regard, people are like, well, maybe it's just because she kind of sucks, and maybe she does, but she's on the lower end of hunters for a while, and having had a hard time exerting pressure anywhere when it comes to boxing. They're going to give a slight increase to the base damage of Viper Shot to better allow her to box and reward players who can constantly and consistently land those Viper Shots. Bearing in mind that this will, the base numbers, they look very low. If you hit all 3 of them, you multiply this by 9. So it goes from 10 to 100, 10 to 30. They're upping that from 10 up to 15. They basically bumped everything up by 5, which means you get a bonus 45 damage if you hit all 3 of them. This may just be good enough to put her in mid, because she can now burn through stuff. There was a time back when Medusa first came out where I knew her as Lady Loki, because she had like 145% scaling on Viper Shot, and she could basically just like, she maxed Viper Shot, and then she got like a Transcendence, and she could solo Gold Fury in literally like 3 seconds because of how much damage Viper Shot does, because it ticks 9 times. As a result, this change could be enough to see her do that, even if it is only for the just secure with mid stuff. If they are going to be running these hunters in the mid lane, there's Medusa, there's AMC. AMC gets banned because it's an AMC. You get rid of Hachiman because Hachiman is very viable in that situation as well. You get rid of Ram because you don't want to deal with Ram. Other hunters that you can look at is Ulra. Ulra, again, is very ability focused and he wants to free cast, but he's not necessarily going to be able to have that team fight changing ability. Medusa has that, and Medusa has pretty okay clear/poke for the early game stages as well. So Medusa could see some more play, and I will reckon we may see a Medusa pick come out, because any of these hunters who play in the hunter position, who want to just go in for a trade situation, you can find that you may be able to do that a little bit better now with Medusa. She comes online a little bit earlier than some of these other hunters. She doesn't mind taking these boxes, and she can still make good use of Devourer's Gauntlets, so she may be picked up. I want to see it. That's my rant-ish on Medusa. We're moving on now to Ra, whose performance and stats have been continually declining through the second half of the season. The god definitely brings a unique tool to the table with his ability to heal his entire team and snipe enemies from a long range on such a low cooldown. However, his damage output when it comes to being close range is at a very low state, so they're increasing the lowest damage of his the lowest damaging ability, the ability Divine Light. This ability creates a good amount of risk if Ra wants to use it to go aggressively, and will also give Ra players more flexibility in their playstyle and give them a higher damage potential. Divine Light right now, after a 2-second windup, will do 220 plus 40% scaling. It's not great. It does come with a slow and a blind, which is very, very strong, but it's not super beneficial outside of necessarily really keeping your passive and maybe peeling for you. Or if you're in a situation where it's just like, I want to hit the wave with something and then kind of like already dead and I don't want to waste my 1 or my 3, so I'm just going to use Divine Light. Now though, however, it is going from 60 to 220, to 70 to 270. So a fairly big change, and definitely it does a lot more impact. You're always going to level this last, but now it does genuinely have impact, considering that this at level 4 does the same amount of damage as it does at level 5. So you're already a level, like 2 levels ahead of yourself here. That's pretty nuts. But not only that, they're also going to be increasing the magical power scaling of this ability from 40 to 55. That's pretty good. That is indeed pretty good. And as well, just to make this feel a little bit better as well, they're reducing the mana cost, which used to go up to 100 mana, which was stupid considering it did nothing damaging and was just a slow, which didn't increase during the levels. And so now it's going to be changed from 60 to 100 to 60 to 80. So a very nice change. Ra may see play, but it depends how well this idea of let's nerf the Guardians in the jungle and in the solo lane, it depends how well that goes. We may still end up with this situation, and Ra could potentially see play in the mid lane if you swap out, say, the Hunter, you take a high pressure Guardian for the jungle, you take a warrior for the solo lane, like for example Kukulkan, who is stupid. I'm just going to point that out right now. You take that, and then you say, all right, we're going to put Ra in the mid lane. What Ra enables you to do is he enables you to siege comps a lot more. It means you don't have to rely on things like the Stone of Gaia for all your sustain, although you probably still will go for that kind of things. And it enables, it just enables you to do a little bit of an interesting side of things. It means that your setup has a lot of long range bursts to it, you have a good bit of secure, and you can continually siege towers still, so it's not too bad. You're just relying a little bit more on the minion side of things. So potentially, again, we may see this shift. It really comes down to, is it worth running a mage over a hunter in the mid lane? And I still think the answer to that is no. Kind of sucks, but that's kind of where we're at. And finally, the last change which is going through this patch is Susanoo. Susanoo has undergone many changes to his damage potential and mobility. After the last round of adjustments, his frustration has gone way down, but so is his overall performance. It's almost as if when Susanoo was doing something right, he was really annoying. Just gonna throw that one out there. So they're going to bring back up some of his damage with the increased damage and the base damage to Wind Siphon. Wind Siphon right now goes from 60 to 120, so it doubles itself up, and now it's going to 80 to 180, so it's more than doubling its damage potential here. So this is nice, a good change for Susanoo, honestly. A bit of base damage, which enables him to do a little bit more. His mobility is still not super great in terms of from where he was originally, which was just stupid amounts of movement speed because he used his abilities, but it could potentially see some usefulness. It could be interesting to see whether or not you could build Susanoo tanky and try this kind of similar build of building Susanoo tanky, because I don't know if his one actually... No, his one wouldn't proc Gladiators Shield 3 times because it can only proc once per ability. I was going to say, that could be super, like, sneaky hidden OP, but it's not. Never mind, that was just thought. Let's get be gone, thought. That one's gone. But yeah, that finishes up the patch notes for patch 4.32, the Rally to Rome. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys feel about this patch, whether you think that they missed anything, whether you think some of these buffs or nerfs were justified, what your favorite skin was. Let me know general thoughts about the patch notes. Be sure as well to let me know what you think they missed. It's always nice to see what people think they necessarily missed, but do remember, with Season 5 coming around the corner, it may very well be included there. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, my name has been Supersonic Blur. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and favorite for more, and to share this stuff so people know that it exists. You guys have been a fantastic audience, and I shall see you all next time.